Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro assured the country is at its best moment in military terms to protect peace in the face of the imperialist psychological war. In Ecuador, unions mobilized nationwide to reject the popular consultation and referendum promoted by President Daniel Noboa. And the United Nations warned that Sudan is facing the world's biggest displacement crisis, with more than 10 million people forced to leave their homes due to an ongoing armed conflict. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we'll begin with the news. We now begin with the information. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro assured that the country is at its best moment in military terms to protect peace in face of the ongoing imperialist psychological war proposed by the United States. While monitoring the advances of the communal government route in the state of Aragua, the head of state denounced the creation of extravagant narratives aimed at justifying a military action against the country. Likewise, the president affirmed that Venezuela has never threatened any people and reiterated that the far right is seeking to make plans to promote bombings and a military invasion of the country. In this regard, he highlighted the level of readiness of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces and the perfect civic military police unity for the defense of the territory.
Como no pueden decir que Maduro tiene armas.
Since they can't say that Maduro has weapons of mass destruction, since they can't say that we have hidden biological and chemical weapons, and since they can't say that we're developing a nuclear weapon, they invent an outlandish narrative, so false that it collapses, and no one believes it, starting with the people of the United States. We are here with our truth, within our law, on our land. Venezuela has never, neither today nor ever, threatened anyone.
Ni nunca ha amenazado a nadie.
And as we were saying, the head of state also emphasized that the Bolivarian National Armed Forces have strengthened their capacities and are at the best moment in decades.
And the military force of our country, which has been cultivated, nurtured, and strengthened from the deepest Bolivarian foundation of our doctrine, and our concept of a people's war, our concept of active popular resistance, our concept of comprehensive homeland defense, and the powerful unity of our highly professional, scientific, strong, and morally guided Bolivarian National Armed Forces. Its fifth special component, the Bolivarian militia, in this perfect popular military police union today. Militarily, Venezuela has a level of preparedness that we have never had before over the decades. I believe that the spirit and strength of the army has been reborn, the liberating army that triumphed across these plains 200 years ago with Bolivar, Sucre, and Urdaneta at the forefront.
Hace 200 años, con Bolívar, Sucre y Urdaneta al frente.
And on Wednesday, Flight 85 of the Return to the Homeland plan arrived in Venezuela, bringing 279 nationals repatriated from Texas from the southern region of the United States. Among the returnees are 218 men, 47 women, 3 teenagers, and 11 children who had been kidnapped by the United States government. They were received by officials from various public safety agencies, and in accordance with established protocols, they received medical care and also guidance and comprehensive support from state institutions before being transferred to their final destinations. The Bolivarian Revolution has established these missions as part of its commitment to the protection, well-being, and family reunification of all Venezuelans. And human rights organizations have accused the United States of being an accomplice to Nayib Bukele's government in violating the rights of 252 Venezuelan citizens. The investigation, entitled "Welcome to Hell," in reference to the phrase with which they were greeted at the Salvadoran concentration camps, details that the White House paid to send Venezuelans to the terrorism detention center CICOT. Testimonies from over 190 detainees, family members, lawyers, and others with reliable knowledge have revealed that they suffered torture, forced disappearance, and sexual abuse. The Salvadoran organization Cristosal, operating from Guatemala, also issued information on this topic. Due to the government persecution, calls for the Human Rights Council to scrutinize the violations by the government of Trump and Bukele. And the Colombian government has decided to end intelligence cooperation with the United States, this as a result of the constant human rights violations in the Caribbean Sea.
President Gustavo Petro and his government have decided to suspend all levels of intelligence from the public forces, from delivering communications and other information to U.S. security agencies, a decision that he has made public through social media, and until the bombings and attacks on boats in the Caribbean are suspended.
There is considerable concern about the size of the military presence, now with the world's largest aircraft carrier located in the Caribbean, and whether this military presence is actually intended to combat drug trafficking or serves more political purposes.
The head of state of Colombia argued that members of U.S. agencies are not acting to take down drug traffickers, but rather to take down the president, his family, and his political position.
Colombia no tiene el mismo acceso a informaciones en Estados Unidos.
Colombia does not have the same access to information. In the US, there is an asymmetry in this supposed intelligence cooperation because what actually exists is a provision of intelligence from Colombia to the US, which is sometimes used to intercept drug trafficking routes or human trafficking.
Interdicción de rutas del narcotráfico o de trata de personas, pero muchas otras veces sencillamente se utiliza para espiar directamente.
And many other times it is used to spy on Colombian officials and political leaders, and what we have seen in recent days to attack Latin American boats in the Caribbean with impunity.
De latinoamericanas en el Caribe.
And the fact is that under the pretext of combating drug trafficking, the U.S. government has deployed an entire arsenal of war in the Caribbean Sea that threatens Venezuela but has also led to indiscriminate attacks on boats, causing the deaths of more than 70 people, as pointed out by President Gustavo Petro and the international community, that also has pointed out to extrajudicial executions.
Ya llevamos por lo menos 20.
We have already had at least 20 missile attacks on civilian vessels. We don't know if they were innocent or guilty. Still, the truth is that there is no death penalty, meaning that unless these people were carrying drugs or weapons and engaged in illegal activity,
O estaban llevando armas o haciendo una actividad ilegal, lo que tienen que hacer las autoridades es interceptarlos y capturarlos.
what the authorities have to do is intercept them, capture them, and prosecute them, seize the cocaine, seize the weapons, well, whatever is worse a priori when from a bomber, locate a boat, even some that have been parked, that is, they have been stationary, and are not moving, and they are bombed in the light of the international human laws. It is an extrajudicial execution, as the UN has said.
Es una ejecución extrajudicial, así lo ha dicho Naciones Unidas.
Colombia se adhiere así.
Colombia joins the United Kingdom, which will also suspend intelligence sharing with the U.S. on operations in the Caribbean, according to information from some international media outlets, adding that London made this decision so as not to be considered an accomplice to operations that it considers illegal.
Hernán Darío Tobar Gaitán, teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. In Ecuador, unions mobilized nationwide to reject the popular consultation and referendum promoted by President Daniel Noboa. More information on this, the National Union of Educators and the United Workers Front denounced that the reforms promoted by Noboa through the popular consultation could affect labor or social security rights, undermining Ecuadorian democracy. In addition, it should be noted that various social movements denounced the government's use of state funds to finance the Yes campaign and therefore urged the National Electoral Council to exercise control. Also, let's recall that Noboa is seeking to hold a referendum proposing to convene a constituent assembly that would lead to the possible elimination of the prohibition on the establishment of foreign military bases in the country.
This November 16th we say no to Daniel Noboa, because we understand that this is a referendum that is costing $60 million, which could have been redistributed to other urgent needs in Ecuador. A constitution that bothers those in power is at risk. They want to return to that old 1998 neoliberal constitution that favored the wealthy. We are here defending the university budget, defending free higher education. We will not allow an indifferent president born in Miami to take away this right that we won in the streets.
And the Alliance of Human Rights Organizations in Ecuador denounced that Daniel Noboa's government committed more than 390 human rights violations in the context of the national strike led by the indigenous organizations. According to a report presented by human rights organizations, the police repression ordered by the government left 2 people dead, more than 470 injured, and 206 detained. The coordinator of the alliance, Viviana Hidrobo, warned that the figures indicate underreporting, as neither the executive branch nor the ombudsman's office made the official numbers public. The report also identifies that 75% of the abuses by state forces occurred in the provinces of Imbabura and Pichincha, in the north-central part of the country.
We point out that these figures are underreported because even under those conditions, we do not have the full capacity to identify everything that is happening. Underreported because the pain sometimes emerges later, weeks or even years later, the stories become known. But above all, underreported because the state, which was supposed to provide us daily with figures on injured, detained, and deceased people, failed in its duty to make the numbers transparent. The Ombudsman's office also did not fulfill its role during this national strike.
And in Costa Rica, social sectors mobilized against the policies of President Rodrigo Chavez's government and demanded dialogue with the authorities. The call to action brought together farmers, unions, teachers, and university students in one of the largest protests in recent years in the Central American country. The unions are demanding that the executive branch open an urgent dialogue and implement measures to protect local food production from competition from imports. The protest is taking place in a climate of political tension after lawmakers rejected a motion to remove the immunity of President Chavez, who faces charges of alleged corruption. And Cuba has denounced that the United States Department of State uses taxpayer money to promote and finance an economic war by manipulating exchange rates within the nation. Precisely, a recent report broadcast on Cuban national television detailed the allocation of U.S. funds to the companies Mediaplex Experience and Más Voces foundations linked to the director of the platform El Toque, an independent media outlet that posts daily and formal exchange rates. In addition, newly unveiled testimonies and evidence available on U.S. government portal demonstrated the involvement of Marco Rubio's office in inflationary operations outside the banking system aimed at promoting exchange rate fluctuations, raising in prices, and weaken the Cuban economy. Meanwhile, also in Cuba, President Miguel Díaz-Canel officially inaugurated the Martyr of Barbados 2 photovoltaic park in the province of Artemisa in the west of the country. This project marks the ending of the first phase of a strategic donation from the People's Republic of China designed to strengthen the Cuban energy development. The initial phase has connected a total of 7 solar parks with a generation capacity of 35 megawatts to the national electricity system. Cuban authorities expressed their gratitude to China not only for this energy contribution, but also for the rapid humanitarian aid that was provided after the damage caused by Hurricane Melissa. A second phase is currently under development, which will add an additional 85 megawatts to the system. Meanwhile, road infrastructure recovery in Santiago de Cuba moves forward with Venezuela's support. This after Hurricane Melissa and the destruction that it occurred. The governor of the province of Santiago de Cuba, Luis Roberto Rosés Hernández, together with the specialists from the Ministry of Construction and the Venezuelan delegation made 2 tours of the affected areas. The Venezuelan and Cuban experts concluded that the main damage is located along the entire southern coast of the province, especially in the municipality of Guamá, due to the high number of damaged roads and infrastructures. The delegations will work together to gradually resolve most of the damage identified, given the complexity of the work. With the notorious absence of the U.S. representatives, the United Nations Climate Conference COP30 continues in the Brazilian city of Belém do Pará, emerging as an opportunity for global South countries to take the lead in fighting climate change. Our correspondent Brian Mayer with more.
I'm standing in front of the China Pavilion inside COP30 in Belém do Pará, Brazil, where 60,000 people have poured in from around the world to participate in a week of official and unofficial events, debates and plenary sessions, trying to come up with solutions to fight or minimize the risks from the current global climate crisis. In an event in which the largest historic contributor to this crisis, the United States, has decided to simply not show up. Now, many people view this as a negative, but Shobhan Saxena writes in The Hindu, this is a big opportunity for the BRICS nations and the global South in general to take the lead in the fight against climate change. As countries in Western Europe backtrack on their commitments to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, as the United States dismantles its extremely weak climate change combating initiatives that were in place under the Biden administration, it's an opportune moment for countries like China, Brazil, South Africa, and India to step up and take the lead in this fight.
We have a second short break coming up now, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. The United Nations warned that Sudan is facing the world's biggest displacement crisis, with more than 10 million people forced to leave their homes. After a meeting with the president of the Sudanese Transitional Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, stated that the situation in the country is critical. Millions of people have been forcibly displaced due to clashes between the National Army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. In addition, 25 million people are facing acute food insecurity, making the Sudanese case one of the world's largest humanitarian emergencies. In Iraq, Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's coalition won the parliamentary elections held on Tuesday. The result was confirmed by the Independent High Electoral Commission, which reported that the bloc obtained more than 1.3 million votes. Voter turnout exceeded 56% of the electoral roll, and according to analysts, the results reflect support for al-Sudani, who was seeking a second term. However, the Prime Minister now faces the challenge of forming a government, as no party achieved the necessary majority in the 329-seat parliament. Therefore, he will have to begin negotiations with other political forces to form a new administration. In the scenario, al-Sudani celebrated citizen participation and affirmed that it represents a vote of confidence in the country's democratic institutions. We go now to Palestine, as an intelligence report confirmed that Washington knew that Israel was considering using Palestinians as human shields. The information obtained by U.S. intelligence revealed that Israeli officials discussed how their soldiers had sent Palestinians into Gaza tunnels that were lined with explosives. According to the report, the information was shared with the White House and analyzed by the Intelligence Committee in the final weeks of former President Joe Biden's administration. It is important to highlight that international law prohibits the use of civilians as human shields during military operations. In this regard, the use of Palestinians as human shields by Israel in Gaza and the West Bank has been documented on multiple occasions, but the recent report constitutes an unusual acknowledgement that Washington collected its own evidence on the matter. And we stay in the United States, as the longest government shutdown in history ended on Wednesday after more than 42 days. President Donald Trump signed a law approved by Congress that puts an end to the longest government shutdown in the country's history. The measure, backed by Republicans and part of the Democrats, allows the full reopening of federal agencies and restores the functioning of the state after weeks of partial paralysis. The bill was approved in the House of Representatives with 222 votes in favor and 209 against. The legislation guarantees funding for most federal agencies until midnight on January 30th of next year, during which time Congress will have to negotiate a new budget package. Moving on to other topics, the National Assembly of France voted this Wednesday in favor of suspending the pension reform law, considered the flagship measure of President Emmanuel Macron's second term. The suspension, which will postpone the gradual increase of the retirement age from 62 to 64, adopted in 2023, was approved by an absolute majority with 255 votes in favor out of 401 cast. This decision represents a political victory for the socialists, who had demanded the measure in exchange for not presenting another motion of censure against the re-elected Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. The suspension text, which seeks to delay the reform until the 2027 presidential elections, will now be debated in the Senate. If a reform after 2027 is not approved, the original law would come back into effect. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.